Hello, today we are going to paint this old barn. Here's the drawing. Um, as you can see in the inset picture, we're after today some of the shadow shapes. Now, this photo was a photo of a photo, so the shadows are much too dark. Here I'm mixing the paint for the barn, which is cadmium red, viridian green, and some ultramarine blue. And here I'm painting some ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And you'll see why. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get some areas. If you look at the picture, there's some areas that look like the wood is faded. So we want to try to get that effect of faded wood so it doesn't look like it's a bright red barn all over. We want to add some of these gradients in there so that we're trying to get that age texture of some of the paint being uh, lightened up or faded out over time. So you're going to see like these blotchy sections, and that's kind of the best way to describe what's happening in these colors. So you'll see some areas that'll go a little bit browner, some redder as we progress in the painting. I do go back in some situations. Now, I added a chicken. You guys could add whatever you want, or you can find a chicken, put it in anything that is kind of in the same motif as an old barn. You could put an old tractor or I don't know, like a wagon wheel or something. Whatever fits a hay bale. So basically, I'm not even thinking about the blotching effect. In fact, I'm kind of encouraging stuff like that to happen in the red of the barn. And you'll see that I'll go back over it later on, and I'm going to add a lot more texture to it with dry brushing and actually another wash to get some of the red a little redder. And you'll see that I'm doing that actually right now. Yeah, I'm using a USB camera, and it actually, I think the color saturation is just over the top. That's why the color looks so intense. There will be a photograph of the actual painting at the end that is more color balanced than what we're seeing here. But you can see that there's a lot of things happening here. I'm adding what looks like some almost cool gray color, okay, in those old slats of the barn. Now we're adding more light and dark, um, and here we're drawing that up, so now you can see what it's going to look like not wet, and you can see how light everything gets, how diffused things are, and those stains are still there, which is fine. We kind of want that to happen in the picture. Yeah, so I'm waiting for it to get dry enough so I can start my washes. Now, I think on the next wash, if I'm not mistaken, I start working on the grayish green, a little bit of the roof. The roof looks like it's a sunny day, so I added just a tiny bit of yellow just to indicate that there's some sunlight on the roof. The roof is also like looks like an old tin um, roof that's definitely faded out over the years. Um, and what I'm doing is I see a little sliver of a sky, not that much in the picture. I'm just adding that cerulean blue just to give us like a little opening to a sky beyond those trees shapes. And unfortunately there, some of the tree shape kind of blended into the roof line. I should have waited a little longer, but I did not. So, and what I'm doing here is I'm using ultramarine blue, a burnt umber, as you can see, viridian green. I still want some color. I don't want it to be like this dead gray color. I still want to have a little bit of life in there, knowing that when this dries, it's going to dry lighter and more, flatter. So right now everything looks really rich because it's wet. Now what I'm going to be doing here is painting around. There's like a little fence that's fallen over. I'm just indicating some of the, basically painting in the negative. I'm painting the shapes around the shape. So you can see that there's not a lot going on there. This is, again, we want to try to keep this whole painting as spontaneous as possible. And now I'm going over everything with a little, with the blow dryer, and you'll see that in some areas I'm actually going to pad out some of the color too, because that's going to help with some of the just some of the textures in the that wooded area back there. Um, am I going for the exact same color? No, not really, but I'm trying to get some of the values to be similar. Now, what I just did here is I wanted to have that branch overlapping, so I did that scrubber brush there, that blue brush to the left. That's how I scrubbed out that shape, and you can see it. Now, I was also showing some of the class how you can get some smaller branches by using a single edge razor or an X-Acto or a utility knife, whatever you feel more comfortable and safe with. Yeah, so I feel that I need to get a little darker back there. I want that contrast between the red, even though in the photograph the wooded area looks almost the same value as the red. Well, I want to go a little different. I want to get that contrast a little stronger. Now, going back to the slatted, that dilapidated fence, or what's left of the fence, I'm painting basically shapes around, still working in the negative just to support the positive shape. And that's it, not really going crazy with any of the detail. It's really not the focal point. It's an element to the composition. So I want to have it there, but I don't want to have it too intense. Um, and I believe I put some shadows in there later on, I think. Um, okay, so yeah, so now what I'm doing is I'm adding the shadows to the roof line. Now, what's happening here is I want to make sure that I don't make like this perfectly straight brush line, because it's not straight, right? It's an old tin roof, and I think I do go back and I accentuate those changes too a little bit more. Right now, I'm just trying to get a color there. That's pretty much it. Here, I'm scraping out a little bit. I just wanted to have a little light come through there, and I basically scrubbed out that stain where the tree shape kind of overlapped and bled into my roof shape. Sometimes that happens if you get a little too far ahead of yourself. You don't know which sides are dry, and so that one I should have waited a little longer to paint in. So I'm still adding more color in the background. I'm still trying to get some complexity back there, some interest. Again, even knowing that that background is just a support element, I still want it to be interesting. I don't want it just to be one color, but I don't also want it to be too detailed. Okay, um, in the photograph, as even well, photographs basically show every little detail. Here, we're trying to suggest the background, and but still have that. Now, here I'm showing to the class that yes, we want to get those shapes dark, and now I'm going back around for my second pass, and I'm getting that those shapes much darker than they are originally. So that's what's happening here. I'm trying to get a little bit more of a perfect shape. Well, not perfect, but actually imperfect shape, I should say, because I want that tin roof to look like it's bent, it's not a perfect line. Um, and there is a little bit of the eave showing through, or the flashing, I guess. And here now, the same thing with this shadow. What we need to do here is we need to get a little more imbalanced as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to paint all this as one big major shape, so that we can see that that area just being nice and thick. We want, meaning I just want to cover it with a good thick paint. Basically, that paint is the same color that I used for the first wash. The only difference is I added more paint, less water, so it's more of the same paint but more saturated. Okay, I don't want to get it as dark as what the photograph is because everything is way too dark in the photo. The shadows are too dark. I still wanted to have some light inside, so inside the shadows. Okay, so now that that's done, we can get a feeling of light already now on the roof line, on the barn, on the front part and the side part of the barn. The side part is on the right. The facing, or yeah, I guess the face would be the left side. And what I do here is I realize that I do have to show a plane, and I will paint that in at some point. I was just showing the class, I do use a bigger brush. I don't want to, I want my shapes to be rather big. I believe the brush I'm using right now might be an 18, I think, loaded with green. Now this green, if you want to know, it's cadmium green, yellow oak, I'm sorry, cadmium yellow, sap green, and you'll see that I get a little darker. So I want it to be more chromatic. Now this is, again, sap green, but with burnt umber and ultramarine blue to get those dark shadow shapes. The idea here is that I want to show like a long drawn shadow, like a trailing shadow right across the front part of the picture plane, just to show that those shadows are falling on the ground as well as they're falling on the barn. Okay, so we want to try to get that feeling. Okay, so there it is. That's pretty much all I do with the foreground. Um, if you feel you wanted to get it to look a little bit more, and I just realized this too, just looking at this, it does get a little softer when it dries, not as intense. But if you wanted to add some more warm tones to that, like yellow ochres or burnt sands, you can drop that in. I'm explaining to the class that there are variations to the shadow shapes. Um, I still think we're going to do that a little later, but I just wanted to make sure because I think one student asked me about like, oh, why wouldn't we just paint the shadows exactly the way we see them at this stage, or when we painted that main shadow, because we still have to paint the other things first. Even though, yes, it's it's a transparent medium, we can probably put the shapes down over, but I like to have the local colors all put in and then the shadows at the very end, so that those shadows are going to lay on top of everything that we paint just before. So when we see the forms of, let's say, the pile of sticks right next to the door, that shadow shape is going to fall over it in a certain way. So now I see that, yes, I do need to get my background a little darker, and that's what I did right there. So I basically went over that. I don't know what happened there. I think I lost a little bit of I'm hoping that I can get rid of that. But yes, so that's what I did. I blocked out some of that area, painted over it really quick, just gave it one wash. That wash had a little bit of ultramarine blue in there. That's why it looks a little cooler. Okay, and here it is. Now, the next shape that I do here will be the doors. And I'm trying to, actually there's a little lull in the video. Here we go. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting the doors, and the doors look a little green. I mean, that could have been, who knows, moss, whatever, but it's something there. And now we can see adding that green, yeah, it looks a little jarring, but when it dries, I know that it's not going to dry as intense. So you have to kind of know what's going to happen with those colors before. So don't freak out, because we know that that light green is almost going to be a blush of whatever color. If you feel like it needs to have a little bit more warmth in there, drive some, just drop in a couple of like a warm tone, like a burnt sienna. A very light wash of burnt sienna would work fine. Now what I'm doing here is I'm putting in some shadows in the window shapes, like around the window panes, just to start getting some form there. I think, yeah, I went over that window pane with some red, so I was trying to scrub that out. So don't think that if you paint over something that it's the end of the world, that you have to restart a watercolor. There are ways that you can, carefully take out some of those overlapping issues. Again, scrubbing them out, and if you had to, you could use white later on. But I find the scrubbing tool, the scrubbing brush rather, works fine. Okay, so we're still seeing some colors in here, in the other door to the left. We're going to work on that because it looks like the door is a little jutting out past the end of the barn. So we're going to resolve that issue there too. And as you can see, that the door definitely, as it dried much lighter. It's almost like a tint. And it's closer to the local color of the door that's in the photo. Let's see. So now I'm working on some shapes. Just like the fence, you'll see that I'm going to be painting in a lot of the negative shapes. So basically what I'm doing is I have a local color of the sticks that are leaning against the wall, and I'm going to be painting around in the negative. So what I'm doing here is like I'm looking for some colors to put in and some accent notes. Now I'm doing the windows, and I think I used the same color here as the shadow color on the stick. So basically, again, working in the reverse, right? Because, well, this is watercolor, so you can't, paint opaquely. So here I saw that dark looked way too jarring. It was too obtrusive. I took a little piece of paper towel and just blotted it out. You guys can do the same thing. Again, the other window, just the shape. I do have a line underneath there, which is a guide. If you guys are really good enough to just draw with the brush, then great. I did have to have a little line. That's why it looks like it's so easy. But yeah, always try to, keep the lines simple, but you want to make sure that they are accurate, right? They could be quickly drawn in, so you don't have to worry about having ruled lines all over. You actually shouldn't. Okay, so more color. So I think I'm looking at, some accents around the doors, the windows. There's going to be a lot of gaps between a lot of things because, they're older. I just, turn the whole painting to the left a little bit just so I could, paint in and draw my... Okay, so this is what I was saying before. I am going to paint around the shapes, right? So I'm looking to get basically the negatives, like the shadow shapes, the negative shapes in between, which are the shadow shapes. And I'm just going to indicate, just like the fence in the background. I'm not really looking to render all those little slats. Which basically, that's probably a part of the fence that came down at some point. The farmer is going to repair, maybe in the spring. All right, so we have that nice dark shadow, which coincides with the shadow up top on the roof eave, and so we're getting a feeling of light. I think just the big drop shadow on the roof line really did that. Now more little information, just some accents around the windows, some negative shapes. I did, unlike the reference, I put a crossbar in the window because I felt I needed to have that shape look more like the opposite shape in the back. Okay, meaning, I'm sorry, that I wanted that window to look like the window on the left. Now, um, yeah, so here again, basically working in the reverse. Now there is a little drawing underneath, which is giving me some bit of a shape to work with, a guideline. Same thing with the window up top there. Um, as you can see, there's a little bit of it poking out. Um, yeah, so here we're going pretty dark right around these shapes and around the chicken, and so we have what looks like, a little slat that, just kind of came undone there. Here I'm looking to draw some verticals. However, right now they are horizontal. It's easier for me to draw horizontals than it is verticals, to get that spontaneous look. So don't think you have to keep the painting, in one position at any point. In fact, with watercolor, you should be moving the paint all over, like to get gradations, to get different textures. Whatever's going to give you the easiest approach, definitely do that. Try to keep it so that whatever makes your line, your dry brush, your wet into wet applications to look more natural, more spontaneous. That's what you have to do. Plus, there is a bit of accuracy, like I said before. The accuracy is trying to keep your drawing sound, right? You don't want to lose a good drawing because of a style or a technique, right? It's great to have a technique, and that's what we're trying to teach here, is to be spontaneous, to go out in nature. I mean, unfortunately, this is from a photograph, but basically, I would be painting this painting exactly the same way if I was on location. So you want to try to paint your pictures as quick as possible. I think this painting may have taken maybe an hour and a half. So outside, an hour and a half is probably all you're really going to have. All right, so here, this is where I resolved that edge of the door. And what I needed to do is I needed to darken some areas, again, just to give it some more contrast, plus to fix my drawing mistake. Or I shouldn't say mistake, it was just that the drawing, that door was like, it didn't resolve itself. It just went right off to the edge of the building, which is odd. That's something that, when you look at a photograph, you can believe it. Now, this is going to haunt me because, well, it doesn't quite look right. I probably should have put a sliver of the red and made the door frame, push the door frame in a little bit more to the right. I didn't do it, and it will come back to haunt me, but it's what it is. It's what's in the picture, and have to go with it. Now here, going back to angling your painting, I'm angling this thing because I want to have basically the whole block. All right, so I work on an Archer's, I think this is 11 by 14 block, and I'm making that color drip. I'm spraying it with water. I'm trying to encourage dripping. I want that to look like the colors are dripping down, or they're broken up. Okay, so I'm trying to get that effect more obvious, because I know that when I dry just like this, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose a lot of the color intensity, which you can see just before your eyes, that when things dry, they do dry lighter and less intense. All right, so now we're almost, well, we still got a ways to go, but we're near the finish mark. Yeah, so this is going to be purpley reddish color. These are going to be for the main shadows, I believe I'm starting to paint. Now, I am going to use my spray bottle, any means necessary to get these colors to be soft, to be because these are the shadow shapes that are trailing over the shapes in the picture, over the door, over the wood pile, and I want them to look natural. In fact, these here on this side, I'm going to get these even more softer, because there was a, if you look, the area on the left, on picture right rather, you're going to see some of those trailing shadows that are going to go on a totally different diagonal, because that's the way that those shapes, those shadow shapes, are falling on that plane. Okay, so keep that in mind. They're not going to follow the same exact mirrored shadow shapes that are on the left. The left side is receiving all 100% shadow. Some of them are closer. Some of the shadows are closer to that surface. Some are a little further away. And you have to make sure that you show that, okay? And that'll give you more depth in the shadows. So it's not just like one shadow shape and leave it. It's a little bit more complex than that. Some of the shadows are from distant tree branches. Some are closest. Obviously, the ones that are closest are going to be the ones that are the harder edged shadow shapes. So keep that in mind. All shadows are not created equal. Some are lighter, some are more diffuse, some are sharper, and that's what we want to try to illustrate here, and really get that sense of shadow. That's what makes this picture actually interesting, is the shadows, right? It's that kind of mystique of that shadow enveloping that old barn. All right. Now you're going to see me do a lot of crazy things, softening edges with my brush, with the spray bottle, trying to achieve softness and hoping that it works. I probably could have done a little bit more detailing, and I think I do go back at some point and do a little bit more dry brushing. Because now that the shadows are in, that's okay. I think I can add a little bit more. Actually, to the roof, as you can see, that shadow shape is cooler, because the sun is usually represented as warm or yellowy, and then the shadows on the front are also warm to some degree. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Some are warm, some are cool. I kind of like that dispersed shadow on that door. It kind of leads the eye away from like the mistake that it's on the edge, like we talked about earlier. So we're seeing now there's some complexity happening. We see these brush strokes just bleeding into one another, and that's what you want in a watercolor. You want to have this spontaneous look, or at least in this style of watercolor painting, right? So yeah, so we're moving along. I think we have like another 5 minutes maybe of this video, and I think I add a little bit of dry brushing at some point, just to move things along. Let's see. Okay, sorry for that little lull. I didn't know how long that okay, well, here's a chicken. So anybody wants to draw the chicken, you can freeze frame, maybe do a screenshot or something. That's the chicken I used. Some people painted it and then forgot that it was there and painted over the chicken. It's not that important. I just felt that the painting needed some kind of life form in it. So I figured the chicken, and that's a big chicken too. I just wanted something in there to give us a little bit more interest, or just some life. That you don't have to paint it in. You could leave it kind of solitary, the way the picture is originally. Yes, so I think we're going to add some more details. I think some of the details kind of got lost when we put the shadows in. These are just little like last minute accents, right? So you want to try to get some a few more darker spots, accent spots here and there. Um, Now here I'm going. I actually used a little white because the tail feathers were. I think I painted over them, and now I'm just trying to get a little bit more of a feeling of the feather shapes. That's pretty much it. I don't think I do too much with that. I mean, sometimes you do have to tidy up your drawing a little bit, and this is basically what I'm doing now. Yeah, I gave him a little bit more of a shadow, or I should say her. Um, yeah, just a little bit right there, just to kind of ground the chicken in. Could I have put a drop shadow in there? Probably, but I think that was fine the way it was. So here is the unveiling. I pull the tape off, the masking tape, so we get some nice corners. And there it is. So you can see how everything kind of came together. I think I'm messing around with the lights here, but that's it. I think I was actually shutting off some lights at the end of the demonstration, so that's why it got a little more somber color. And in just a few seconds, we are going to see the original painting, and there it is. So that's basically it, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Bye now.